Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. You're watching In Deep on the Delta, and this is the weekly report for September 28th. And I would have to say the fishing on the Delta this last week has tapered off a little bit. The last few weeks it's been what I would call very good to even red hot at times, and this week it's taken a little dip, probably because of tides and just the natural ebb and flow of the bite out here on the Delta. No river news to speak of. All the tournaments are pretty much burned off. There's a few small tournaments going on here and there, some club tournaments. I don't have a lot to report on that. Weather conditions out here and water conditions have just been perfect. I'm getting 70, 71 degree water temps. I talked to Alan Fong on Tuesday. He was reporting 67 degree water temperatures up around Liberty Island. I'm getting 5 or 6 feet of visibility here in the central Delta. I know down south it's still cloudy, but everything's a go out here as far as water conditions. It's cool in the morning, a little bit foggy in the morning if you get out early, but I mean, these are the days when you can just come out and pretty much fish through the day and have fairly consistent fishing. The last couple weeks I've been doing really well on topwater early in the morning. That bite has cooled off the last couple times I've been out. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but let's start off with the stripers. We'll do a quick rundown on the stripers. And I don't have a lot of information. I know that all of my friends who are fishing stripers, whether they're trolling, whether they're plugging, whether they're live baiting, they're catching fish, but they're not, the river's not choked up with big numbers of fish. Obviously, the trollers are being more consistent on the numbers. The guys that are throwing the big plugs are getting a good quality fish this year. A lot of double-digit fish coming in. Most of the fish on the Delta are from, I'll say, B&W, Eddo's out that way, and then from Grizzly Island all the way down to Liberty. There's probably a few more fish in the Sacramento Riverside. With that being said, I'm not seeing very few sea lions in the central Delta. I'm out in Mildred now. I haven't seen a sea lion out here. I think I saw one down in Middle River this morning. Not many up and down the channel. So that's telling me there's not a lot of stripers, at least here in the central. I'll also say, I know a lot of the guys that I see out here all the time, the guys that are trying to come out and get a couple fish for dinner, they're moving around a lot. And I know these guys, and when they're out here to catch 2 fish and go home, and when I see them moving all around out here, I know the fishing is not red hot. They're having to move around. They're fishing pumps, they're fishing points, they're fishing moving water, island breaks and things like that. And they're really having to move around. So they're not getting their limits real quick and going home. So that's the situation here in the central Delta. Largemouth bass. Boy, I've been hitting it hard, and I know this, like I say, my last couple trips, the bite has tapered off, and you can see when I have this many rods on the deck, that's probably telling you that I'm not finding a real great pattern. For the last couple weeks, my morning bite has been really strong. Evening bite has been pretty good. The morning bite for me has not been as strong. As a matter of fact, today I was out about sun up, and I think I got one nice fish, and I caught a couple of dinks in about 2 hours of topwater fishing. That was not good, and I had to break down and do some worming and some drop shotting to catch a few fish. So with that being said, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. Next week, I'm not getting up at 4 in the morning and coming out for that morning bite. I'm going to let that sit for a while, let a set of tides run through. I will be coming out later, and I'll fish, see if there's an evening bite. Maybe that's still happening. But right now, for me, it's not worth getting up at that hour of the morning. When I have been catching fish on topwaters, it is on a little bubble popper, a bubble walker, or a Rico. I have not been doing well on my big swim baits. I've taken off the Mikey, I've taken off the Suwitch, and I have kind of replaced those with flipping baits, worming, so on and so forth. I've got a punch rod and a flip rod over here. Haven't been doing well on either one of those, but I haven't given them a fair try. I have been throwing a frog. Every now and then I get a bite on a frog, but most of my fish are not coming in shallow water where we think about throwing frogs in the slop. They're coming in about 4 to 8 feet of depth, and I have been doing my most consistent fishing this week has just simply been on a little drop shot with the Margarita Mutilator, and I am throwing them around points, tule points. If there's vegetation that's caught up in tule point, I'll flip it out, and I want at least 4 feet of depth. When I see that weight drop down and I can see that line going down, 4, 5, 6 feet, that's where I've been getting most of my fish. Whopper ploppers are still producing for me. One thing that I've done with the whopper plopper, I have moved down to a 110 size. This is the 130. This is the regular size that a lot of people throw, and you can see I've been throwing a smaller one. This helps me when I am out early morning when it's shallow. That 110 is a lot lighter, so when you cast it out, it doesn't drop into the down and penetrate the surface as deep as this heavier 130. So I'm able to fish it in shallow water without getting the weeds on it and stuff. I have thrown a underspin. That's getting smaller fish. It tells me that there's fish around, but I haven't picked up a good fish on that. One little trick I'll tell you that I've been doing when I have been unable to throw a drop shot in somewhere, generally because the bottom's super weeded up, it's not clean, your drop shot's pulling a bunch of vegetation up. I have switched over to basically this is that Yamamoto Slinko. That's the unweighted worm, and what I have here is a very light, a 1/16 ounce weight up top, floating worm or a neutral buoyancy worm, and I'm throwing that in to the same places that I'll throw a drop shot, and this is not getting as tangled up as much. If I'm finding little flats and stuff, I can throw this out. I've got about 14 inches of leader between my weight and the worm, and I just have this pegged with a couple of bobber stops, so I can move this weight up and down. If the vegetation is really thick, then I will pull it up so that the worm will float up above it. If I only have a couple 6 or 8 inches, I'll move the weight down so it'll peg the worm to the bottom, but it'll allow it to float up above the vegetation. This is letting me actually have a presentation where I can pitch it out and reel it back in and just pop it through the vegetation. So this is working when the drop shot's not working. Margarita Mutilator has been my favorite color, and when I'm doing this, I'm just throwing a green pumpkin. There's nothing fancy about anything I'm doing. Again, I'll just say make a decision every 5 minutes you're out here. Either change your bait, change your location, change your color, change the cadence on what you're throwing, whatever it is. If it's not working, don't stick with it for too long, because the fish are not congregated up. You're catching a fish here, a fish there. Every now and then you put a pattern. The fish on the points are on more of a bite. Sometimes they're on a better bite on flats. I was getting some fish on the edge of flats where it's dropping off into that 4 to 6, 8 feet deep, just kind of tooling along out there and throwing a drop shot. Not the most fun way to fish, but it's picking up some good numbers of fish, and even that drop shot is picking up some nice fish in the 3 to 3.5 pound class. So that's about all I have for you. Next week I'll see if I can get some more information on some of the guys that are striper fishing. I think I'm going to try to make a trip out on the Sacramento side, and I'll get you some information on how I do there. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure